What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. We're breaking down Michigan Edge player Braiden McGregor from the New York Jets 2024 undrafted free agent class. And we're looking at a champion pedigree guy that honestly came on really strong during the playoffs for their championship hunt. And we'll dive into all the specifics, but if not for a pretty gruesome injury very early on in his football career, I think you're talking about a guy here that's probably a top 100 pick, and you don't really bat an eye at it. So once again, if things can click right here, the New York Jets are getting immense value from a guy that generally shouldn't be available where we found him, right? This is not necessarily the same kind of Leonard situation that we seen in terms of a guy that was a former first rounder. But Braiden McGregor definitely screams on the high end day two talent, but definitely was still supposed to be, a 4th, 5th, 6th round selection at worst. So let's go ahead and dive into some of what's happening here with this guy. 6'5", 257 pounds. And when you look at him, he's not necessarily skinny or, wiry, any of those terms like that, but he has a build that looks like he could pack on another 20 to 30 pounds of weight, and he'd be a completely transformed player, right? I kind of envision that Jermaine Johnson type of leap where we've seen that year 1 and year 2 physical transformation and how much that really helped him out. I can kind of see the same thing happen to Braiden McGregor with an NFL program. He had a Senior Bowl invite and he participated in the first 2 days of practice before he ended up missing out on day 3 and then, of course, sitting out for the game. But he's bringing you a prototypical build, and he even has a more interesting background when you take a look at his football career. Right, in high school, he played tight end and as an off-ball linebacker, which I think those various positions, as we've seen with numerous players, definitely helps out. Even if you aren't a multi-sport athlete, if you've been able to play multiple positions, as anybody who's played football for extended period of time generally has to do, you get to understanding how the defense as a whole clicks, and I think that definitely is the case with Braiden McGregor here. But going back to high school, and I believe it was his senior year though, but he had a very gruesome injury, right? You're talking like Teddy Bridgewater level trauma, where he tore his ACL, his PCL, and his meniscus in his right knee, and this ended up impacting him throughout his first 2 years of his collegiate career with Michigan, where he missed his entire redshirt year and then ended up having to sit out his sophomore year as well, which means you're talking about a guy that's very light on game experience as a whole for a guy that's been in college for an extended amount of time compared to people that are jumping out as soon as they absolutely can. But he's played 5 tech, he's played the 4-eye tech position. He can be used with his hand in the dirt. He can rush the passer standing up. So offers you some disguise ability there. And generally, there's just a ton to work with, right? When I looked at Braiden McGregor and kind of seen how he was utilized, what he's done, for a guy that hasn't been able to play, more than 30 or so games in college and wasn't a special, a defined player on the defensive line, right? You're talking about a guy that made that move going into college. He's been able to work on a flurry of pass rush moves. He's been able to, not be a complete dud in the run game. This seems like somebody that takes the coaching extremely well, and he's diligent in doing the off the field stuff in and of itself, because the number of moves you see him pull off and that he's able to successfully pull off is mind-boggling to me, right? Former 4-star recruit, excuse me. He was basically one of the key players in their last 5 games leading up to the championship. I mean, 45 pressures, 6.5 sacks, and less than 400 passing rush snaps in 2023. And over those last 5 games, he accrued something like 3.5 sacks or something. Had huge games for Michigan. When you take a look at Alabama, him sacking Jalen Monroe 2 times in the first half. He had 6 pressures versus Maryland. So this is a guy that's flashed. He seems like he kind of thrives in those high pressure type situations. for the team. You take a look at what he does particularly well so far as a pretty neophyte player. Long arms serve him very, very well when he's out there setting the edge, and in general he uses them pretty well. That extending ability when it comes to the pass rush and run. Plenty of pass rush moves, as we talked about. He has a rip, he has a swim, he has a push-pull, a crossover, kind of an armbar type thing that I've seen him pull off a few times. There's a lot to love with this guy, and I think he can continue to iron out a lot of the kinks with those moves and get even better. Strong punch. Always tries to establish first contact in the run game. You see him rushing generally better inside when he has that leverage, and can be used pretty effectively on stunts and twists as well. And one of the things that I think will help him out quite a bit is this defense in and of itself. A wide 9 scheme is going to help him out there where he's putting a tackle on an island and he has that two-way win ability, either inside where he seems to be most effective or outside where, he's not the most athletic guy in the league, but he can catch you sleeping and he'll make you pay for it. And one of the things that a lot of people raved about that I saw from the coaching staff to teammates, and definitely seen it on the film, is the great motor, right? This is a guy that definitely will embrace that all gas, no brakes mentality. Opportunities for him. Change of direction ability won't impress again. If it's not for this guy's leg injury, right? I think you're talking about a guy that most people in the league will be drooling to have, right? I think Max Crosby is kind of the guy that I envision as more of a complete product. If Braiden McGregor was actually able to go into college healthy and get those reps, time, game experience, etc. Not to put him in too high of a league, but we'll talk about player comps in a minute. But basically that knee injury is a little bit scary, even still. Seeing it kind of creep up for him in the Senior Bowl, seeing that it's essentially wiped out 2 years of college for him, and seeing it sap a lot of what he probably could have been as an athlete for sure. Can be overpowered, has a bit of a weak anchor. Again, a lot of that's going to be attributed to that leg, but he's a guy that you expect to be able to get stronger, maybe mitigate stuff like that. Easily displaced in a run game. You can see him get washed out of plays pretty often, pretty effectively by not even high caliber athletes or people that are overly skilled. He just doesn't seem to have that NFL level strength just yet, and that showed up pretty easily in college. More of a disruptor than an impact player. Now, I mentioned like Maryland, I mentioned Alabama. He does have those games where he can be the star, but this guy screams more of your just key rotational defensive player that's going to come in and not have the defense take a step back and potentially be a surprise provider for you, right? Hand placement is going to need some improvement with him. You see him, have some blocks that are slipped more frequently than you would like, and he's not much of an effective speed to power converter. But again, all of that makes a ton of sense to me when you just factor in that leg, right? And so the upside with him, I think, is definitely particularly capped. I think the floor is definitely a lot lower than what you would love to see from a guy like this as well, which speaks to the fact that he's undrafted. But if he ends up being one of those magical players where he just has a freak injury the rest of his career, he ends up being healthy. Yes, he's been sapped of maybe some of that natural ability that he would have had, but he's making the most of the skills and what his physical presence allows him to do. I think you'll be, pretty well rewarded in the end, especially on this coaching staff that seems to be able to pull off some miracles in the development department. But you take a look at him, a guy with a very similar build and some of the same kind of drawbacks, outside of the injury. Calebon Chasen, and then Chris Harrington, I think, is another pro comp that I've seen at least thrown out there for what he could look like. But I know a lot of you guys were excited about Braiden McGregor, and I can see why looking at the film. Again, at this point, anybody that's a defensive player walking through this building with this staff, I get pretty hyped about it, especially if I see anything that looks like they have some kind of standout ability to them. And to Braiden McGregor's point, I guess his superpower would be his arsenal of pass rush moves. The guy that had the most effective skill set in his class was Leatu Latu. and I'm not putting Braiden McGregor in that same territory or anything, but he's definitely more of a seasoned pass rusher in terms of knowing how to set guys up and use the moves and how he's comboing them together and having a pass rush plan and stuff. So if he can follow that arc, I think we'll be happy. But outside of that, let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you again. Peace.